Imagine a type of sovereignty that doesn't actually need a crown.
Right.
Like it doesn't require a throne.
Right.
It has absolutely zero need for subjects to, bow down. And it operates with the undeniable invisible force of gravity.
It's a paradigm of power that fundamentally bypasses the human ego. I mean, one that doesn't ask for your belief and certainly doesn't wait for your permission. It just, well, it simply is.
Yeah, exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. You're listening to our exploration of a really dense, highly poetic, and just deeply philosophical text titled Queen of the Matriarch.
It is a heavy one.
It really is. And today we are bypassing standard politics entirely to figure out if human intuition might actually be a literal, cosmological blueprint.
Which is a huge concept.
Right. And if you've ever felt a gut instinct that totally defied all logic, or if you've ever felt kind of at odds with how modern society defines authority, the framework we are unpacking today might offer the exact vocabulary you've been looking for.
Yeah, and as a quick reminder for you listening, our job today isn't to take a side or endorse this philosophy.
Exactly.
The source material deals with these sweeping, sometimes challenging concepts about human history, gender, and power. So we are here strictly to impartially unpack the fascinating framework the author has laid out so you can, weigh these ideas for yourself.
Which is going to be quite the journey, I think. Because to even step foot into the cosmology of this text, we have to perform a massive linguistic unlearning.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we have to completely scrap our standard everyday definition of the word queen. Because if you're like me, when you hear that word, your brain immediately goes to hierarchy.
Right, you picture a monarch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You picture a monarch whose entire status relies on the political structure surrounding her,
Right.
or, someone who inherited a title through a bloodline.
And the author explicitly categorizes that standard view as a diminished definition. What we're doing here is stripping all of those human-made trappings away. The core argument is that the title Queen of the Matriarch isn't conferred by an archbishop or a prime minister. It's not inherited, and it isn't reliant on having a king as a counterpart.
Yeah.
The premise is that this concept precedes language itself, like it predates any system of governance humanity has ever even attempted to construct.
So let's draw a line here between two terms the author uses, because the distinction is vital to everything else we're going to discuss.
Okay, yeah.
The text talks about a matriarch,
Right.
and then it talks about the queen of the matriarch.
Right, they're not the same thing.
No, not at all. It paints a standard matriarch as a mother in full authority, like a gravitational center for a family or a community. There's this vivid line describing how people orient around a matriarch the way tides orient toward the moon.
Which is a beautiful image. And the matriarch is the lived human expression of authority. She's the one transmitting life, shaping the community, holding the lineage together. She is a tangible person. But the queen of the matriarch is the underlying source of that principle. She is the raw intelligence that the human matriarch carries in her bones.
So if I'm understanding this, think of it like the difference between a CEO and the concept of commerce itself.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Like in our standard top-down definition of power, a queen is the CEO. She's sitting at the absolute top of an organizational chart, issuing directives down the chain of command. But the text is arguing that the queen of the matriarch isn't the CEO.
She's the system.
Exactly. She's the fundamental system of exchange that makes the company even possible to begin with. You can fire a CEO or a CEO can retire, but the concept of commerce remains entirely untouched.
That's spot on. And the author uses a geological metaphor to explain the structural difference, too.
Oh, right, the mountain.
Yes. She says she is not the elder grandmother standing at the summit of a hierarchy. She is the root from which the entire hierarchy grows. She is the mountain itself, not the summit.
I mean, I follow the metaphor, but I have to put on the brakes and push back on the core premise here just a little.
Sure, go ahead.
In the world we actually live in, authority requires consent, or at least recognition. Like if I stand in my living room and declare myself the supreme emperor of the household, but my dog completely ignores me and goes to sleep on the couch.
You're not an emperor.
Right. I'm just a guy talking to myself in an empty room. So how can power genuinely exist if absolutely no one acknowledges it?
Well, the text addresses that exact friction by tying her sovereignty back to the physics of gravity. Let's look at how gravity functions. Does gravity require a public relations campaign to exist?
The last time I checked. No.
Exactly. Gravity operates with total unyielding authority. It is immune to negotiation. If you trip and fall, Gravity doesn't pause midair to ask if you intellectually comprehend the mathematics of mass and acceleration.
That's very true.
It just simply pulls you down. The author builds a case that this maternal sovereignty is of that exact order. She doesn't require a court of sycophants. She doesn't require historical recognition to be what she is. And crucially, she generated the binary of existence without being defined in relation to a masculine counterpart. She is the foundational layer.
Okay, wow. So if her sovereignty operates like the literal physics of gravity, the text takes the next logical leap. And this is where the scale of the argument gets staggering for me.
It really zooms out.
It moves from sociology straight into astrophysics. I mean, the author argues that her intelligence is the literal architectural blueprint of the universe.
Yeah, we are firmly in the realm of cosmology now. The author insists that the matriarch is not a social structure to be debated.
Right, it's not a policy.
Exactly. It isn't a family arrangement. It isn't just a mirror image of patriarchy where we, swap out men for women in the boardroom and call it a day. The text calls the matriarch a cosmological fact.
A cosmological fact. Let's really look at what that means, because the author isn't just speaking metaphorically here. They are using the physical universe to validate this maternal intelligence.
Right.
The text draws parallels between cosmic events and gestation. It literally argues that the universe runs on a maternal operational reality.
And to understand the mechanics of that claim, we have to look at the physical examples the author highlights, like take stellar formation. In a highly patriarchal or conquest-driven framework, we might focus on the violent collisions in space, the explosive forces, the conquering of territory.
Sure. Supernovas and all that.
Exactly. But this text points out that stars actually form through a slow gathering coherence. Dust and gas pull together, holding and nurturing elements over millennia until they reach the density to ignite. It's a cosmic gestation.
Wow.
The universe builds through gathering and nurturing, not just through destruction.
And the same logic is applied to ecosystems on Earth, which I found fascinating. We've been trained to view nature through the lens of pure competition, predator versus prey, survival of the fittest, this brutal hierarchy where the strong eat the weak.
Right, nature red in tooth and claw.
Exactly. But the author frames an ecosystem as a self-healing body. If a forest fire sweeps through, the ecosystem doesn't declare defeat. It uses the ash as fertilizer to gestate new growth.
It recycles it.
Yeah, the primary drive isn't domination. It's a deep pull toward coherence, toward wholeness, and maintaining balance through relationship.
Even the physics of light is brought into this framework. The text observes how light bends, refracts, and always finds its way through an environment, comparing that to the way the feminine principle navigates and finds a path forward without needing to obliterate the obstacles in its way.
Just flows around them.
Exactly. The argument is that these aren't poetic coincidences. They are the signature of this maternal intelligence woven into the very fabric of physical reality.
And it goes even further back than stars or light. The text dives into the primordial dark.
Yes.
The state before duality.
Right. Before there was a division of anything up or down, light or dark, male or female, she was the undivided field. And the author makes a sharp critique of how historical narratives have treated darkness.
Oh, this part was so interesting.
We've inherited a framework where light is the ultimate good, the heroic force, and darkness is labeled as lesser, other, or simply a void that needs to be conquered and eradicated.
It completely flips our everyday linguistic bias on its head.
Mm.
Like, think about how we use those words. We say someone is enlightened as the highest compliment.
Right.
And we say someone is kept in the dark as an insult or a massive disadvantage. We inherently associate the dark with ignorance or malice. But this text asks us to completely rewire our vocabulary. It reclaims the dark, calling it the womb dark and the seed dark.
Because the womb dark isn't an absence of light. The text frames it as a primary register of absolute fullness.
Right.
Everything that would ever exist was already contained in that darkness. It just hadn't been divided into separate, visible parts yet.
So when light finally does emerge in this cosmological timeline, it doesn't arrive as a conquering hero to slay the darkness. The text introduces an incredible mechanical concept here. It says light came from her darkness the way sound comes from silence.
It's a subtle but really profound shift in how we understand origin. Sound doesn't destroy silence, right?
Right, it needs it.
It relies on the silence in order to be heard. It emerges as a gift from that quietness, not an enemy. For the eternal principle holds both the light and the dark, because she sourced both. They are in relationship, not at war.
But, okay, As fascinating as it is to view the universe through this lens of gestation and coherence, it immediately forces a massive, undeniable historical question.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
If this maternal intelligence is the undeniable root of the cosmos, if it's as absolute as gravity, why does human history look the way it does?
Yeah.
Like, if she is the blueprint, why did the matriarchal principle retreat and allow thousands of years of patriarchal domination?
This is undoubtedly the text's most provocative claim. It completely reframes the historical retreat of the feminine. The author states very directly that she did not lose the world.
I have to pause here because this is where the philosophy rubs very uncomfortably against lived reality.
It does.
Saying the patriarchal era was a deliberate gesture or that this intelligence permitted a contraction is a tough framework to adopt. If you're someone listening to this who has experienced very real systemic oppression, zooming out to an epoch scale can feel, well, dismissive.
I totally get that.
How does the author reconcile this macro-level patience with micro-level human suffering? It sounds a bit like saying, don't worry about the house burning down, the ash is good for the soil.
It's a completely valid friction point, and the text requires the reader to wrestle with it. The author isn't denying the reality or the brutality of human history, but the framework demands that we look at time differently.
How so?
The text argues that this intelligence operates at the scale of epochs, not human lifespans. She saw the full arc of time. The argument is that she allowed a period of contraction and narrowing of the human experience because she understood the mechanics of expansion.
Okay.
Just like a muscle must contract to generate force, or a lung must empty before it can draw a massive breath, a massive evolutionary expansion requires a period of intense contraction preceding it.
So the author is basically rejecting the entire narrative of victimhood, but doing so on a cosmological timeline rather than a political one.
Yes. It calls the story of the feminine's retreat as a defeat, a primary distortion. The underlying logic is that you cannot overpower her any more than you can overpower time itself.
Right.
She is the foundation. To view her as conquered is to misunderstand what she fundamentally is.
The analogy the text uses makes this a bit more tangible, I think. It compares her to an offstage playwright.
Oh, that's a great section.
Yeah. The patriarchal era filled the stage, occupying all the foreground attention, making all the noise, and, acting out the drama. But while that was happening, the deep intelligence remained offstage, holding the deep architecture of the theater steady. She wasn't managed. She was attending to what comes next.
It shifts the feminine from being a conquered entity to an unshakable foundation that outlasts the temporary noise of the foreground. But if she is operating off stage, she needs a hiding place. A frequency needs a receiver. And the text reveals where she went. She survived by seeding her frequency into the one place that couldn't be fully colonized or completely rewritten by external laws.
The human physical body.
Exactly, the somatic channel.
So if she was hiding out in the background, this explains exactly how that frequency survived the historical contraction. It hid in plain sight, hardwired right into our biology. The core thesis here is staggering the body knows before the mind decides.
The author terms this somatic certainty. The mechanics of this are fascinating because recognizing this maternal intelligence isn't an intellectual exercise.
Yeah.
You don't read a philosophical treatise and logically deduce your way to recognizing her.
It's highly visceral.
Yeah.
The text says you receive her the way you receive coal.
Yes.
I love that imagery because it bypasses the brain entirely. You don't analyze a drop in temperature with your intellect first. You don't look at a thermometer and rationally decide, oh, it appears to be chilly, I should feel cold now.
Right, you don't think yourself into shivering.
Exactly. You feel a shift in your skin. Your pores react before your brain even forms a sentence.
And the author describes somatic certainty as an involuntary opening or contracting of the chest cavity, or a sensation in the solar plexus that feels like a compass needle locking on to true north.
Yeah.
It's an immediate, undeniable physical recognition that completely precedes any need for external logical evidence.
It's like when you walk into a room and instantly know two people were just arguing. You didn't hear them fighting. You didn't see them yell. But the air is just thick.
You can cut the tension with a knife.
Yeah. Your stomach tightens. Your body processes the data of that tension before your brain can even formulate a thought about it.
That physical reaction is the receiver picking up the signal. And this brings up a profound point about historical conditioning.
How so?
Well, if the physical body is the primary receiver for this primordial frequency, then how does a system of domination maintain control? You can't just ban books or rewrite laws. To dismantle matriarchal knowing, You have to sever the connection between the individual and their own physical body.
You have to jam the signal.
Exactly.
The text argues that the patriarchal era had to destroy trust in somatic intelligence. They had to systematically convince humanity that their bodies were fundamentally unreliable, that the body was impure or dangerous or prone to deception.
Right.
Because as long as the physical body was trusted as an instrument of truth, this deep cosmic frequency was completely accessible.
That was the mechanism of control, the lever used to maintain the foreground. If you make the body a site of shame or suspicion rather than a site of intelligence, you effectively mute the receiver.
Yeah.
But the tragic result of this conditioning becomes apparent when people today actually encounter that unadulterated frequency.
Because it doesn't always feel good at first. Like if you've been heavily conditioned to distrust your body, encountering that frequency registers as unease or even pure panic.
It's overwhelming.
The author compares it to the sensation of something too large entering a room whose dimensions have been made deliberately small. The nervous system hits the alarm bell because it's receiving a massive, undeniable truth that it has been trained for centuries to reject.
So the dimensions of the internal room have to be expanded to hold it. The text emphasizes that the Queen's transmission never stopped. She is broadcasting continuously at full strength, exactly like gravity.
Right.
The only variable in the equation is how much of the signal a particular body has unlearned its bracing against.
It explains so much about the elusive concept of intuition. It's like we've all been handed this incredibly advanced, highly calibrated, built-in GPS system at birth.
Perfect analogy.
But society spent hundreds of years telling us the screen is cracked, the voice is lying, and we should just ignore it and navigate using a paper map drawn by someone else entirely.
And the GPS never broke. We just stopped trusting our ability to read the coordinates. Which brings us to the present moment and what the author calls the return.
Okay, so the body is the receiver and the signal is constant. What happens when humanity starts clearing the static? Like what happens when people stop relying on the paper map and start tuning back into the GPS?
The text frames the return not as a political shift or a sudden revolution, but as a cosmological sequence finally completing its arc. The era of contraction reaches its absolute limit, and the deep intelligence that has been waiting off stage begins to move toward expression again.
But true to form, it doesn't look like a standard uprising.
No, not at all.
It doesn't arrive with a battering ram. The text describes the movement as gentle, but it makes a point to clarify that gentle does not mean small or weak. It is gentle the way a tide is gentle.
Think about the mechanics of a tide coming in. It doesn't need to destroy the beach to occupy it. It doesn't need to perform its power for an audience or declare war on the sand.
It just flows.
It simply moves to fill a space because it is its gravitational nature to fill it. It's unstoppable precisely because it refuses to engage in the mechanics of force or domination.
And as the tide comes in, the text clarifies that the signal itself isn't actually getting stronger in the modern era. Like, the broadcast is exactly the same as it was in the primordial dark.
Right, it's a constant.
What is changing is the capacity of individuals to receive it. People are expanding those internal dimensions to hold the frequency without sounding the alarm.
So what does this framework offer you, the listener, right now? Because whether you choose to view this text as literal structural cosmology about the physics of the universe, or if you view it as a profound poetic metaphor for trusting human intuition, the challenge it presents remains identical.
It challenges you to stop requiring external evidence for what you already deeply physically feel to be true. It asks you to recognize that your intellect might just be a busy tourist wandering around in a body that already holds the permanent truth.
It asks you to trust the compass needle in your solar plexus, to reconnect with a sovereignty that operates exactly like gravity. You don't have to vote for gravity, you don't have to build a throne for it, and you certainly don't have to convince anyone it exists for it to hold you securely to the Earth.
The intelligence of the universe, according to this framework, is held in your very bones. You are the biological receiver for a principle that predates language, predates governance, and predates history.
It's a realization that completely changes how you inhabit your own skin.
It really does. Which leaves us with a final lingering question to ponder as we wrap up today's analysis. If our physical bodies are actually highly tuned receivers for a primordial frequency that is older than human history itself, what other profound unspoken truths are we biologically attuned to, just waiting for us to stop bracing ourselves and finally listen?
A question worth sitting with.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration. Keep listening Keep trusting that internal compass, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.